The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
This program is mostly funded by individual memberships. Please support today. Go to davidpakman.com/membership. We would love to have you as a David Pakman Show member. You probably wouldn't be surprised, based on all of the retrograde right-wing social policy and really American foreign policy at large over the last couple of decades, to hear that human intelligence may slowly be declining. But that's the claim that's being made by Dr. Gerald Crabtree, who's a Stanford University researcher and geneticist. He says that humans as a species are suffering intellectual decline, and that it has much to do with adverse genetic mutations, but that human intelligence is also suffering for other reasons. So according to Crabtree, cognitive and emotional capabilities are fueled and determined by the combined effort of thousands of genes. If a mutation occurred in any of these genes, which is unlikely, then intelligence or emotional stability can be negatively impacted. So he says, I would wager that if an average citizen from Athens of 1000 BC were to appear suddenly among us, he or she would be among the brightest and most intellectually alive of our colleagues and companions, with a good memory, a broad range of ideas, and a clear-sighted view of important issues. Further, I would guess that he or she would be among the most emotionally stable of our friends and colleagues. So I think there's a number of other factors that would mitigate that. For example, being completely out of place and not even understanding modern society. So I think it would be a little bit hard to gauge that. Don't you think, guys?
No, I think this holds up. I think the assumption is that, well, if you were just to take this person at that stage of development in human life.
But you'd have to compare it within their society. I guess what I'm saying is it'd be a hard comparison to make.
I mean, I think if you took someone who was our age right out of there and put us here, yes. But I mean, when comparing their brain, their intelligence.
You're saying if you raised someone, you plucked someone from there and raised them in our society from the get-go.
I agree. I believe they would be among the brightest.
What this really gets at, though, is that Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest is less and less applicable. In other words, right now, because of technological and medical advancements, particularly, certainly in the last 100 years, particularly in the last 50 years, and more broadly in the last 300-400 years, better genes don't necessarily dominate society as they would have so markedly in the past. I think that makes sense, Natan.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't really get the comparison with plucking someone out of Athens from 1000 BC. Was it 1000 BC or 1080?
1000 BC.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the average person now is much more knowledgeable than the average peasant, which were most of the people even as recently as the Middle Ages. So, I mean, we have to separate knowledge and, I guess, abilities. But certainly I think that I mean, from the article that we're reading from to get this information, it doesn't seem like it's really well argued that it's a genetic difference and not just a societal one. So, in other words, people playing video games and watching American Idol being a leading factor here compared with an actual genetic change. So, we would need to see a lot more.
It is true that in certain times in the past, having some basic genetic disadvantages would have made it so that you certainly don't reproduce, and very likely you don't live very long either. But now, because of technology, that evolutionary pressure does not seem to be as strong.
No. Right. I mean, the in terms of genetics, the crap is not getting filtered out. It's staying around. There is not a push for a pursuit of knowledge like there was prior, because, well, I guess that knowledge is available to us. People don't have to be smarter, stronger, faster now. You can be at the bottom in every category and live a perfectly good, normal life in this country, in this world, in this society.
Yes, given some luck in terms of where you happen to be born, that's probably a big factor,
too. There's always that.
Interesting to think about. I encourage you to check out the study.